The envelope lies open on the restaurant table, its contents a blade slicing through the fragile tapestry of my life. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, sits across from us, her eyes glinting with a venom I've never seen. The paper inside a DNA comparison declares a truth I've buried for 17 years. My daughter, Lily, may not be my husband's. The air thickens heavy with betrayal as my heart races like a trapped bird. I'm Claire, and this moment shatters everything. The restaurant hums around us, oblivious. Waiters glide past their trays, clinking with wine glasses, while laughter spills from a nearby table. The scent of garlic and rosemary wafts from my untouched plate, but my stomach churns. My husband, Mark, stares at the paper, his knuckles white. I can't look at him, not yet. The memory of that night 17 years ago claws its way back a stranger's hands, my screams the hospital's cold sterility. I thought I'd locked it away, but Evelyn's cruelty has picked the lock. "What is this?" I ask, my voice trembling. Evelyn leans forward, her lips curling. "The proof that you're the garbage I always knew you were." Her words hit like a slap, sharp and deliberate. I blink, confused. "Whose DNA did you compare?" I say, but the answer dawns before she speaks. Mark's name is on the report alongside Lily's. My daughter. Our daughter. The room spins, and I grip the table's edge, its wood smooth under my fingers. Mark's silence is a weight. I steal a glance. His face is a mask of hurt eyes, glassy. I want to scream that this isn't what she thinks, that I didn't betray him. But the truth is, uglier, more jagged. 17 years ago, I was attacked during a burglary while Mark was out. The emergency contraception I took should have ended any chance of pregnancy. But Lily came anyway, a miracle laced with doubt. We chose not to know to love her without question. Now, Evelyn's meddling has ripped that choice away. "How dare you?" I hiss, my voice low but venomous. "You heartless," I catch myself swallowing the word. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have said it, but in that moment, it felt right. Mark stands abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "We're leaving," he says, his voice hollow. I follow, clutching the envelope, its paper crinkling like dry leaves. The restaurant's warmth fades as we step into the cool night, the city's neon lights blurring through my tears. Back home, the house is quiet, our kids asleep. Lily, 17, with her hazel eyes like mine. Ethan, 15, all elbows and attitude. And Sophie, 8, our miracle after years of trying. I collapse on the couch, the envelope still in my hand. Mark paces, his boots thudding on the hardwood. "She had no right," he mutters. I nod, but my mind is elsewhere, replaying Evelyn's gift last Christmas, a DNA test kit for Lily. I thought it was odd, but I brushed it off. Why didn't I see it? Like forgetting to wear sunscreen and wondering why you're burned. The DNA test. I remember Lily's confusion when she opened it. "Why just me?" she asked, her tall frame slouched on the couch. "Want me to do it instead?" I offered, joking about my adopted roots. She laughed, and we swapped it for an Amazon gift card. A light moment, now tainted. Evelyn's been watching Lily, commenting on her height, her thinness, her differences. I should have known it wasn't innocent. Mark stops pacing and sits beside me. His hand finds mine warm and steady. "We didn't want to know," he says, his voice cracking. "We decided that." I nod, tears spilling. "She's ours, Mark. Always." But the paper in my hand screams uncertainty, a puzzle piece from a past I can't escape. The attack was unsolved, then linked to other crimes. A year ago, the man was caught, sentenced after I spoke at his hearing. Lily and Ethan knew I was attacked, but not the details. Now, Evelyn's actions threaten to unravel it all. I block her number from my phone and the kids. Mark hesitates, but I leave his choice to him. The house smells of Sophie's strawberry shampoo, a fleeting comfort. I think of Lily upstairs, unaware her grandmother's cruelty has exposed a secret we guarded for her. My fingers trace the envelope's edge, sharp as a blade. Why does betrayal always cut deepest at dinner, like serving poison with dessert? The night stretches on heavy with questions. Did Evelyn suspect for years? How did she get Lily's DNA? The test kit never left our house. My mind races a hamster on a wheel, chasing answers I don't have. Mark's breathing slows beside me, but sleep eludes us. The city outside hums indifferent, its pulse a stark contrast to our fractured quiet. I think of Lily's birth, her tiny hand in mine, the moment we chose love over doubt. That choice is under siege now, but I won't let Evelyn win. My heart steadies, a spark igniting. This is our family, our truth. I'll fight for it, even if it means facing the past I've buried. The envelope sits on the coffee table, a silent challenge. Tomorrow, we'll face it together. The night of the burglary lingered like a stain on my soul, a memory I'd pressed into the darkest corners of my mind. It was 17 years ago, a muggy summer evening when the world I knew unraveled. Mark had gone out with his brother Tom, leaving me alone in our modest apartment, the kind with creaky floors and windows that never quite shut. I was 30 then, hopeful despite years of fertility struggles, clutching the promise of ovulation medication like a lifeline. The air smelled of jasmine from a candle I'd lit, its flicker casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when the window shattered. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet glass scattering across the linoleum like spilled diamonds. Before I could scream, he was there, a man in a ski mask, his breath sour with liquor. My heart thundered, a trapped animal, as he grabbed me. The struggle was brief, brutal. My nails clawed at his arms, but he was stronger. The details blur now mercifully, but the violation left a wound that never fully healed. When it was over, he fled, leaving me crumpled on the floor, the jasmine candle still burning. I dragged myself to the phone, fingers trembling as I dialed 911. The police came, their radios crackling, their questions gentle but relentless. At the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic clung to everything. They offered emergency contraception, and I took it, tears streaming. It felt like betraying our dream of a child, undoing months of medication, but the thought of carrying his child was unbearable. Like choosing to burn a book before reading it. Mark arrived, his face ashen. He held me, his flannel shirt soft against my cheek, and whispered, "I'm here, Claire." We didn't speak of it much after. The case went cold, linked to other attacks, but no arrests. I buried the pain, focusing on adoption plans, on rebuilding. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Months later, I felt off sick, heavy like a balloon tethered to the ground. I blamed depression, the weight of trauma. My appetite vanished, and irregular spotting from the contraception masked the truth. I didn't suspect pregnancy until a friend, noticing my fatigue, half joked, "You sure you're not pregnant?" I laughed, but doubt crept in. A drugstore test confirmed it, 2 pink lines staring back like a dare. Mark and I sat on our couch, the same one where we'd planned our future, and marveled. A miracle, he said, his smile fragile but real. The dramatic event came at my first appointment. The doctor's ultrasound wand glided over my belly, the room filled with the whoosh of a heartbeat. 15 weeks, she said. My breath caught. 15 weeks meant the pregnancy began around the attack, not later. The math was a cruel riddle, casting doubt on paternity. Mark's hand tightened around mine, his silence louder than words. Everyone in the family still argues whether we should have tested then, but we chose not to know to let love outshine fear. An intriguing piece of information surfaced later, though I didn't know it then. The attacker had left traces DNA on my clothes, cataloged but unmatched. Years later, when he was caught, it linked him to a string of crimes, a shadow that haunted me long after that night. But in those early months, I only knew uncertainty, a secret Mark and I carried like a shared wound. The apartment felt different after. The jasmine candle's scent turned my stomach, so I switched to lavender, hoping it would soothe. I'd catch myself staring at the repaired window, its new glass too perfect, like a scar that doesn't quite fade. Mark hovered his protectiveness a balm, though guilt shadowed his eyes. I should have been there, he'd say, and I'd hush him, knowing guilt was a thief that stole from us both. Life pressed on as it does. I'd walk to the corner store, the city's hum a reminder of the world beyond my pain. A street musician played saxophone, his notes mournful yet hopeful, like my heart. I'd smile at strangers, their faces a blur, and wonder if they could see the fracture in me. One day, a kid dropped his ice cream and wailed, and I laughed my first real laugh since. "At least it's not my shoes," I told his mom, and she grinned. Small moments stitching me back together. Mark and I talked late into the nights, our voices low to keep the world out. "We'll be okay," he'd say, and I'd nod, wanting to believe it. The pregnancy was a tether pulling us forward. I'd rub my belly, whispering to the baby Lily we'd name her to be strong. The doubt lingered, but so did hope, delicate as a spider's web. Evelyn, Mark's mother, was distant, then her calls, brief, her visits rare. I didn't yet know her suspicions, her sharp eyes cataloging differences. That would come later, like a storm on a clear day. For now, I focused on surviving, on the life growing inside me. The hospital's contraception should have worked, but Lily defied it, a spark in the dark. Why do miracles always come with a catch, like finding a pearl in an oyster you didn't mean to open? The news of my pregnancy hung over us like a chandelier, dazzling yet precarious, its crystals catching light and shadow in equal measure. It was late autumn, the city draped in a chill that seeped through our apartment's thin walls. I was 30, Mark 33, and our dreams of a child had been battered by years of barren hopes and fertility clinics. Now, this unexpected gift came laced with a poison we couldn't ignore. The scent of damp leaves clung to my coat as I returned from the doctor. The ultrasound image tucked in my purse, a fragile promise. I sat on our couch, its faded plaid a comfort, and waited for Mark. The room smelled of the coffee he'd brewed that morning, now cold in the pot. My hands trembled as I unfolded the ultrasound, Lily's tiny form a blur of gray and white. 15 weeks, the doctor had said. The words echoed, each one a stone dropped into still water. I'd thought I was 5 or 6 weeks along my irregular bleeding, a cruel trick of fate. The math pointed to that night, the burglary, the assault. My stomach twisted, a vine curling tight. Mark came home, his boots heavy on the stairs. His face, usually warm as a summer afternoon, was taut with worry. "What did they say?" he asked, shedding his jacket. I handed him the ultrasound, my voice catching. 15 weeks, Mark. He froze, the paper trembling in his hands. We sat in silence, the clock's tick, a metronome to our dread. The dramatic event was this moment, our joy shattered by doubt, the question of paternity, a specter between us. "We don't know for sure," I whispered, but the lie tasted bitter. Mark's eyes met mine, green, as the forest we'd hiked in happier days. "She's ours," he said, his voice firm but fragile, like a cracked vase still holding water. We talked into the night, our words weaving a fragile net to catch our fears. Abortion was unthinkable. The ultrasound had shown Lily's heartbeat a flicker we couldn't extinguish. Adoption loomed, but Mark shook his head. "I don't care whose DNA," he said. We'll raise her. An intriguing piece of information lay buried in our decision we vowed never to test her paternity. Let her decide when she's older, I said, and Mark nodded. It was a pact, sealed in the dim glow of our living room, the city's hum a distant lullaby. Everyone in the family still argues whether that vow was wise, but it felt like the only path through the thorns. The days that followed were a delicate dance. I'd catch Mark staring at me, his gaze soft, but searching as if memorizing me anew. I'd smile, hiding the ache, and he'd squeeze my hand, his calluses, a reminder of his steadiness. The apartment felt smaller, its walls closing in with each kick I felt. I'd rub my belly, whispering to Lily, "You're our miracle." The doubt lingered, but so did love a river carving through stone. Outside, the world spun on. I'd walk to the park, the air crisp with fallen leaves, their crunch underfoot a small symphony. A dog chased a frisbee, its owner laughing, and I envied their ease. If only life were that simple, I muttered, then chuckled. At least I'm not chasing my own tail. Humor was my shield light as it was. At the grocery store, a cashier complimented my glow. Thanks, I said, it's mostly panic. She laughed, unaware of the truth. Evelyn called, once her voice sharp as ever. How's the pregnancy, she asked, and I mumbled something vague. Her interest felt perfunctory, a duty rather than warmth. I didn't know then that she'd later turn her gaze on Lily, her suspicions a slow poison. For now, she was just Mark's mother, distant but harmless like a storm cloud on the horizon. The city's rhythm soothed me, taxis, honking street vendors, hawking pretzels, their salty scent, a comfort. I'd sit by our window watching strangers pass their lives, a mystery. One evening, a kid on a skateboard wiped out, then hopped up grinning. Nice recovery, I called, and he waved. Moments like that stitched me together, reminders that life persisted beyond my pain. Mark and I leaned on each other, our love, a lighthouse in the fog. We'd cook together, the kitchen warm with the scent of garlic and tomatoes. We're gonna be parents, he'd say, stirring sauce, and I'd nod the word parents, a melody. But at night, alone with my thoughts, I'd trace the scar of that summer night. The contraception should have worked, but Lily defied it, a star born in darkness. Why do gifts always come wrapped in thorns, like finding a rose in a briar patch? By winter, I was showing my belly a gentle curve. Friends threw a small baby shower, their gifts piled high, tiny onesies, a mobile with dancing bears. Their joy was a balm, though I avoided their questions about due dates. Mark and I clung to our pact, our love for Lily, a flame we'd guard. The future was uncertain, but she was ours, no matter what blood said. The decision to keep Lily wove itself into our lives like a golden thread, delicate yet unbreakable, binding us against the shadows of doubt. It was early winter, the city cloaked in frost, our apartment a cocoon of warmth against the bite outside. I was 30, my belly rounding with the promise of Lily, while Mark at 33 carried a quiet resolve that steadied me. The air smelled of cinnamon from a pie I'd baked, a small act of defiance against the chaos of our past. We sat at our kitchen table, its surface scarred from years of shared meals, and laid bare our fears. The ultrasound's truth, 15 weeks not 5, had cracked open a fault line, but we refused to let it swallow us. She's ours. Mark said, his voice a low tide, steady and sure. I nodded, my hand on my belly, feeling Lily's flutter, a moth against a lantern. We spoke of adoption, of paternity tests, of every path, but the one we chose to love her, without knowing, to let her be our daughter, unquestioned. The dramatic event was our vow sealed in that cramped kitchen. No tests, I said, my voice firm, despite the tremor in my chest. She'll decide when she's grown. Mark's eyes, green as spring, held mine. Agreed, he said, and we clasped hands, a pact forged in love's fragile steel. Everyone in the family still argues whether we were naive to trust love over science, but it was our only armor against the past. An intriguing piece of information shaped our choice. We'd heard of children thriving in families that embraced them fully. Biology be damned. A friend's adopted son loved fiercely was proof enough. We clung to that, a lifeline in the storm. The assault, the hospital, the contraception's failure, they were ghosts we'd banish for Lily's sake. She was our star burning bright, despite the dark she came from. Days unfolded softly like petals after rain. I'd waddle to the corner market, the air sharp with snow, and smile at the vendors selling chestnuts, their smoky scent, a winter hymn. "Gonna be a mom soon?" he asked once, and I grinned. "Yep, and I'm already craving her snacks." He laughed, tossing in an extra bag. Humor was my buoy keeping me afloat. At home, I'd knit booties, the yarn soft as a whisper, each stitch a prayer for Lily. Mark was my anchor. His presence a steady hum. He'd come home, his coat dusted with snow, and kiss my forehead, his lips warm against my chill. "You're glowing," he'd say, and I'd roll my eyes. More like a human furnace, I quipped, fanning myself. His laughter was a melody rare but precious. We'd lie awake talking of names. Lily for my grandmother, a woman of quiet strength. The name felt right abloom in our barren season. Evelyn remained a distant figure. Her calls clipped her interest in my pregnancy perfunctory. I didn't sense her suspicions, then didn't see the seeds she'd later sow. She was just Mark's mother, sharp-tongued, but uninvolved, like a hawk circling far above. I focused on the present, on the life kicking inside me. The city pulsed outside taxis, honking lights, twinkling like stars fallen to earth. I'd watch from our window, the glass cold against my palm, and feel Lily move, a reminder of our choice. One evening, a neighbor's cat slipped into our apartment, purring like a motor. "Guess we're cat parents now," I said, scratching its ears. Mark chuckled, tossing it a toy. "Practice for the real thing." Small moments like that wove joy into our days, a counterpoint to the ache of uncertainty. The assault lingered, a bruise beneath the skin, but I pushed it down, focusing on Lily, on love. Our friends rallied their support, a warm quilt. They'd drop by with casseroles, the kitchen rich with the scent of thyme and cheese. "You're gonna be great parents," one said, and I clung to her words, though doubt gnawed. What if Lily asked questions one day? What if the truth surfaced? I'd shake off the thoughts like shaking snow from a coat and smile. Why do choices always feel like bets, like tossing a coin and praying for heads? By spring, I was heavy with Lily, my body, a map of new curves. Mark would rub my feet, his hands gentle, and we'd dream of her, her laugh, her first steps. The vow held us a lighthouse in the fog. We'd chosen love, not fear, and it felt like enough. The assault was a shadow, but Lily was light, her existence a defiance of that dark night. We'd build a family, not on blood, but on the promises we kept. Lily's childhood bloomed like a wildflower in a cracked sidewalk, vibrant against the odds. Her laughter a melody that filled our home with light. It was the early years of her life when the city's pulse seemed to soften, its harsh edges blurred by her presence. I was in my mid-30s, Mark nearing 40, and our apartment, once a battleground of doubt, became a sanctuary. The air carried the scent of baby powder and warm milk, a tender contrast to the city's exhaust. Lily was a wonder, hazel eyes like mine hair, curling in soft waves, her thin frame a mystery we never questioned. She'd toddle after Mark, her tiny hands clutching his fingers, and he'd scoop her up, his laugh rich as honey. "You're my adventure," he'd say, and she'd giggle, unaware of the shadows we'd buried. Ethan came 2 years later. Then Sophie, our family, a tapestry woven from love's stubborn thread. The assault, the uncertainty, they faded like a bruise under new skin. The dramatic event was subtle, a crack in the foundation we didn't see. Evelyn Mark's mother began visiting more, her eyes sharp as she watched Lily. She's so tall, she'd say, her tone probing, or those eyes, where'd they come from? I brushed it off, chalking it up to a grandmother's curiosity. But her gaze lingered, a hawk circling prey, and I missed the warning. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have noticed her suspicions, but I was too wrapped in Lily's light to see. An intriguing piece of information lay in Evelyn's past. She'd always prized bloodlines, her pride in Mark's lineage, a quiet obsession. I didn't know then that she'd later turn that lens on Lily, her questions a prelude to betrayal. For now, she was just Evelyn, her comments odd, but harmless, like a radio tuned to static. I focused on our life, on Lily's firsts, her wobbly steps, her babbled words, each a jewel in our crown. Mornings were my haven. I'd wake to Lily's chatter, her crib by our bed, and brew coffee, its bitter warmth a ritual. The kitchen smelled of toast and jam, Lily's sticky fingers leaving prints on everything. "You're a walking art project," I'd tease, wiping her hands, and she'd laugh, a sound like bells. Mark would read her stories, his voice a low tide, while I folded laundry, the fabric softeners lavender, a gentle hug. The city was our playground. We'd push Lily's stroller through the park, the air crisp with cut grass pigeons scattering like confetti. A street performer juggled, and Lily clapped, her joy infectious. "Think we could juggle diapers?" I whispered to Mark, and he snorted. "Only if they're clean." Humor was our glue, binding us through sleepless nights and tantrums. Why do kids always steal your heart and your sleep, like thieves who leave glitter behind? Evelyn's visits were brief but pointed. She'd bring toys, plastic noisy things Lily ignored, and watch her play, her lips pursed. "She's so different from you two," she said once, and I laughed it off. "She's her own person," I said, but her words stuck, a splinter I couldn't pluck. Mark shrugged it off, too, his loyalty to me a shield. We were a unit, our love for Lily a fortress. Friends filled our days with warmth. They'd come over, their kids tumbling with ours, the living room a chaos of blocks and giggles. "You're a natural mom," one said, and I smiled, hiding the ache of the past. The assault was a ghost locked away, but Lily's existence was its defiance. I'd watch her sleep, her chest rising like a tiny bellows, and feel a fierce protectiveness, a lioness guarding her cub. The city's rhythm cradled us, subways, rumbling vendors, calling their pretzel carts a salty lure. I'd take Lily to the library, her eyes wide at the books, and we'd read under a window, sunlight pooling like gold. One day, a kid spilled juice on her dress, and she wailed. "It's just a splash," I said, dabbing it. "You're still a princess." She grinned, and I marveled at her resilience, a mirror of my own. Mark and I leaned into parenthood, our vows unbroken. We'd lie awake, whispering of the future, Lily's dreams, Ethan's mischief, Sophie's arrival. The uncertainty of Lily's paternity was a shadow we ignored, our love a brighter flame. Evelyn's growing scrutiny was a distant hum, unnoticed in our joy. We'd chosen love, and it felt like enough, a river smoothing jagged stones. The whispers of doubt crept into our lives like ivy, subtle at first, their tendrils curling around the edges of our contentment. It was Lily's 16th year, the city pulsing with the heat of late summer, its asphalt shimmering like a fever dream. I was 44, Mark 47, our home, now a larger house on the city's fringe, its walls echoing with the laughter of Lily, Ethan, and Sophie. The air carried the scent of fresh paint, a recent project to brighten our space, but beneath it lingered a tension I couldn't name. Lily was a vision, tall and lithe, her hazel eyes mirroring mine, her hair a cascade of curls. She was an athlete, her volleyball games a family ritual, her grace on the court a quiet pride. But Evelyn's visits had grown frequent, her comments sharper, like a knife-nicking skin. "I wonder where that height comes from," she'd say. "Or she's so thin, not like you or Mark." Her words, cloaked in casual observation, pricked at me. I'd smiled, deflecting, but they settled like dust I couldn't sweep away. The dramatic event came one evening at a family barbecue, the backyard alive with the sizzle of burgers and the hum of cicadas. Evelyn, glass of wine in hand, leaned toward Lily, her voice loud enough for me to hear. "Those eyes," she said, "they're not quite Claire's, are they?" Lily frowned, glancing at me, and I forced a laugh. "She's got my everything," I said, but my chest tightened. A violin string pulled taut. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have confronted Evelyn then, but I let it slide, fearing a scene. An intriguing piece of information emerged later. Though I didn't know it that night, Evelyn had been talking to Mark's brother Tom, piecing together fragments of our past. She'd overheard snippets about the attack years ago, her mind twisting them into suspicion not of assault, but of infidelity. For now, her comments were just thorns pricking at the edges of our peace, their true intent hidden like roots beneath soil. I watched Lily closely, after her confidence unshaken, but her questions sharper. "Why's Grandma so weird about me?" she asked one night, sprawled on the couch, her volleyball gear strewn about. The room smelled of her coconut shampoo, a scent that grounded me. "She's just old and nosy," I said, winking. "Like a cat sniffing everyone's business." Lily laughed, but her eyes lingered, searching. I changed the subject, my heart a drumbeat of unease. Mark noticed too, his brow furrowing when Evelyn spoke. "She's always been critical," he said, chopping vegetables for dinner, the knife's rhythm steady. "Ignore her." But I couldn't. Her words were pebbles in my shoe, small but persistent. I'd catch her staring at Lily, cataloging differences, height, build, the way she moved. It felt like a puzzle she was solving, one I didn't want finished. Why do doubts always bloom where love should grow, like weeds in a rose garden? The city's rhythm carried us forward, subways, clattering streetlights flickering like fireflies. I'd drive Lily to practice the car, filled with her chatter. Her dreams of college, a bright thread. One day a street vendor tossed her a free apple, grinning. "For the champ," he said, and she beamed. "Thanks, but I'm no champ yet," she teased, and I laughed, her ease a balm. Moments like that reminded me of our strength, our bond. Friends filled our home, their presence a warm tide. They'd rave about Lily's games, their cheers a chorus, and I'd bask in her light, pushing Evelyn's barbs aside. But at night alone, I'd replay her words, their sting sharper in the dark. The assault, buried deep, stirred faintly, a ghost I refused to face. Lily was ours, her paternity a question we'd vowed to leave unanswered. Evelyn's scrutiny threatened that vow, a storm cloud gathering. I tried to talk to Mark, the kitchen warm with the scent of roasting garlic. "She's fixating on Lily," I said, stirring sauce. He sighed, rubbing his neck. "She's always been like this. I'll talk to her." But he didn't, and I let it go, our harmony too precious to disrupt. Evelyn's next visit was quieter, her comments veiled, but her eyes never left Lily, a hawk tracking a sparrow. One evening, Sophie spilled juice on Lily's jersey, and Lily just laughed, ruffling her sister's hair. "You're a walking disaster," she said, and Sophie giggled. I watched, my heart swelling, but Evelyn's voice echoed, unbidden. "So different," she'd said. I shook it off, focusing on my girls, their love a shield. Humor kept me steady, small jokes, like telling Ethan his messy room was a modern art installation. He groaned, but it eased the tension. Our vow held, but Evelyn's gaze was a crack in our foundation. I didn't know then how far she'd go, how her suspicions would unravel us. For now, I clung to Lily's light, to our family's warmth, the city's hum, a lullaby. We'd chosen love, and it was enough until it wasn't. The Christmas gift arrived like a serpent in a velvet box, its menace cloaked in festive cheer, poised to strike at the heart of our family. It was December, Lily 16, the city aglow with twinkling lights and the scent of pine. Our home hummed with holiday warmth, the living room a mosaic of wrapping paper and laughter. I was 44, Mark 47, and our children Lily, Ethan, Sophie were the pulse of our world. The air carried the sweetness of gingerbread, a batch Sophie and I had baked its spice lingering like a promise. Evelyn's presence at our Christmas gathering was a ritual, her sharp edges softened by tradition, or so I thought. She sat by the tree, her silver hair catching the glow, handing out gifts, with a smile that never reached her eyes. When Lily opened hers, a 23andMe DNA test kit, the room stilled, a breath held too long. Lily's brow furrowed, her hazel eyes flicking to me. "Just for me?" she asked, her voice light but puzzled. Evelyn shrugged, casual as a cat. "Thought it'd be fun," she said. My stomach twisted, a knot of instinct I couldn't name. The dramatic event was that gift, a Trojan horse wrapped in festive paper. I laughed it off, my voice a touch too bright. "What you trying to dig up family secrets, Evelyn?" She smiled, thin as a blade. "Just curious," she said. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have called her out then, but I deflected, fearing the truth her curiosity chased. The assault, the uncertainty of Lily's paternity, our vow to let it lie, felt fragile under her gaze. An intriguing piece of information lay in Lily's reaction. She offered the kit to me, her generosity a shield. "You're adopted, Mom." "Want to do it instead?" she asked, grinning. I seized the chance, joking. "Sure, I'll find out if I'm secretly royalty." We swapped it for an Amazon gift card, her laughter a balm. But Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her plan thwarted, and I missed the warning. Her suspicion, rooted in overheard fragments from Mark's brother, was a seed now sprouting its vines, reaching for Lily. The holiday passed in a blur of warmth. We strung lights, their glow soft as a lullaby, and sang carols, Ethan's off-key notes of family joke. "You're scaring the neighbors," I teased, and he grinned, tossing a snowball. Humor was our glue, stitching joy into the seams of doubt. But Evelyn's gift lingered a splinter under my skin. I'd catch her watching Lily, her comments sharper, her height, her thinness, her differences. "She's so unlike you," she said once, and I bristled. "She's mine." I snapped, my tone a warning she ignored. Mark sensed it too, his jaw tight when Evelyn spoke. "Why the DNA test?" he asked her later, the kitchen warm with the scent of cocoa. She waved it off. "Just a fun gift," she said, but her eyes darted away. He let it go, and I did too, our harmony a delicate thing. The city sparkled outside its snow-dusted streets, a canvas of hope, but doubt crept in, a thief in the night. Lily, blissfully unaware, shone bright. She'd help Sophie decorate cookies, her patience endless, the kitchen a mess of icing and sprinkles. "You're a sugar wizard," I said, licking frosting off my finger, and she laughed, her curls bouncing. Moments like that anchored me, her light a beacon. But at night, I'd lie awake, the DNA kit's box on my dresser unopened. Why did Evelyn choose Lily? The question gnawed a dog with a bone. The city's rhythm carried us shops, bustling carolers, harmonizing their voices, a fleeting comfort. I'd take the kids ice skating, Lily gliding like a deer, Ethan wobbling, Sophie clinging to my hand. A vendor handed us hot cider, its steam curling like a dream. "Merry Christmas," he said, and I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying Evelyn's gift, her intent a puzzle I couldn't solve. Friends filled our home, their laughter a tide against my unease. They'd praise Lily's volleyball skills, her college dreams, and I'd beam, pushing Evelyn's barbs aside. But the kit was a shadow, a reminder of our vow to love Lily, without knowing to let her choose her truth. Evelyn's meddling threatened that a crack in our foundation widening. One evening, Sophie knocked over an ornament and Lily caught it, laughing. "Nice save," I said, and she winked. "I'm a pro." Her ease soothed me, but Evelyn's voice echoed unbidden, her curiosity, her gaze. I didn't know then how far she'd go, how her suspicions would unravel us. For now, I clung to our warmth, the city's glow a fragile shield. Why do gifts always hide thorns like a rose pressed in a book, beautiful but sharp? The shadow of Evelyn's suspicions grew long and lean, stretching across our days like a crack in fine porcelain, its fracture hidden until the light struck just so. It was early spring, Lily 17, the city thawing under a tentative sun, its streets slick with melting snow. I was 45, Mark 48, our home a haven, where the laughter of Lily, Ethan, and Sophie wove a fragile harmony. The air carried the scent of fresh laundry, a clean promise, but beneath it lurked the unease Evelyn's words had sown. Her comments about Lily, her height, her thinness, her eyes had sharpened each one, a needle pricking the fabric of our peace. I'd tried to dismiss them, but they clung stubborn as burrs. Lily noticed, too, her brow furrowing after Evelyn's visits. "Grandma's weird lately," she said one afternoon, tossing her volleyball in the living room, the thud soft against the rug. Her hazel eyes, so like mine, held a question I dreaded. I forced a smile, the room warm with the scent of chamomile tea. "She's just got a bee in her bonnet," I said, and Lily laughed, but the air felt heavier, a prelude to a storm. The dramatic event was my confrontation with Evelyn, a moment born of mounting frustration. It was a Sunday, the city humming with the chatter of brunch crowds, and Evelyn had come for coffee, her purse clutched like a shield. As she sipped, she glanced at Lily, who was helping Sophie with a puzzle, and said, "She's so skinny, must get that from somewhere." The words were light, but their edge cut deep. I waited until the kids were upstairs, then faced her in the kitchen, the counter cool under my palms. "Why do you keep picking at Lily?" I asked, my voice low but steady. Evelyn blinked, her lips pursed. "She's just sensitive," she said, dismissive as a wave. "You're imagining things, Claire." My chest burned, but she left before I could press further. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have pushed harder, demanded answers, but I held back, fearing the truth her words circled. An intriguing piece of information lay in what she didn't say. Evelyn's suspicion, fueled by overheard fragments from Mark's brother Tom, had twisted into a conviction that I'd betrayed Mark. She didn't know of the assault, only the attack, and her own assumptions, a narrative she'd built without asking. I confided in Mark that night, the bedroom dim, the city's glow filtering through the curtains. "She's fixating on Lily," I said, my voice a whisper. He rubbed his eyes, his flannel soft against my arm. "She's always been nosy," he said, but his tone wavered. "I'll talk to her." He didn't, and I let it slide, our harmony a delicate thing, like a spider's web glistening with dew. Why do warnings always come in whispers, like a breeze before a hurricane too soft to heed? Lily remained our light, her volleyball games, a family pilgrimage, her serves fierce as her spirit. I'd cheer, my throat hoarse, the gym's rubbery scent, a strange comfort. One game she spiked the ball, and Ethan whooped, "That's my sis." I laughed, nudging him. "You're her hype man now." Humor was our tether, keeping us grounded. But Evelyn's words echoed her Christmas gift, the DNA kit, a ghost that wouldn't fade. I'd tucked it away, unopened, but its presence gnawed. The city pulsed on buses, rumbling vendors, hawking flowers, their petals bright as hope. I'd walk with Sophie to the park, her hand small in mine, and watch her chase pigeons, their wings a soft flurry. "They're like tiny dancers," I said, and she giggled. Moments like that soothed me, but at home, I'd catch myself staring at Lily, her height, her grace, searching for signs I didn't want to see. Our vow, no tests, no questions held, but Evelyn's scrutiny was a tide eroding our shore. Friends filled our days, their warmth a bulwark. They'd drop by praising Lily's college plans, her athletic scholarship dreams, and I'd beam, pushing doubt aside. But at night, the assault stirred a shadow I couldn't outrun. Lily was ours, her paternity, a secret we'd locked away. Evelyn's probing threatened to break that lock, her motives, a puzzle I couldn't solve. One evening, the envelope lay before us like a guillotine's blade, its contents poised to sever the delicate threads of our family's trust. It was a warm spring evening, the city's pulse softened by the hum of distant traffic, its lights twinkling like scattered jewels. I was 45, Mark 48, and we sat in a restaurant, the air thick with the scent of rosemary, and wine summoned by Evelyn for a dinner she deemed urgent. Our children, Lily, Ethan, Sophie, were home unaware of the storm about to break. The tablecloth crisp and white mocked the chaos unfolding. Evelyn sat across from us, her silver hair catching the candlelight, her eyes sharp as flint. She slid 2 envelopes toward us, her movements deliberate, a chess player delivering checkmate. "Open them," she said, her voice cool but laced with triumph. My fingers trembled as I lifted the flap, the paper smooth and heavy, its weight a premonition. Inside was a DNA comparison, Mark's name, alongside Lily's, the results, a brutal proclamation, no biological match. My heart stuttered, a bird trapped in a storm. The dramatic event was this moment. Evelyn's betrayal laid bare, her accusation, a poisoned dart. "What is this?" I asked, my voice a threadbare whisper. She leaned forward, her lips curling. "The proof that you're the garbage I always knew you were," she said. The words struck like a whip, raw and vicious. Confusion clouded my mind, but clarity pierced through as I reread the names. "Whose DNA did you compare?" I said, though I knew. Mark's face, pale as moonlight, mirrored my dread, his eyes glassy with hurt. Everyone in the family still argues whether I should have held my tongue, but rage surged, a tide I couldn't stem. "You heartless?" I began, the word swallowed by restraint, though its echo lingered. Mark stood his chair, scraping the floor, a jagged sound in the restaurant's hum. "We're leaving," he said, his voice hollow, a man adrift. I followed, clutching the envelope, its paper crumpling like dry leaves. The city's cool air hit us as we stepped outside, the neon glow blurring through my tears. The drive home was silent, the car's hum a poor shield against the ache. The scent of Mark's aftershave, usually a comfort, felt stifling. I replayed Evelyn's Christmas gift, the DNA kit, Lily's confusion, our swap for a gift card. How had she gotten Lily's DNA? The kit never left our house, a puzzle piece missing in the dark. My mind churned, a river swollen with rain, chasing answers. Why do truths always cut like glass, like stepping barefoot on a shard you didn't see? At home, the house was quiet, the kids asleep. Lily's volleyball trophy gleamed on the shelf, a testament to her fire. I collapsed on the couch, the envelope a weight in my lap. Mark paced his boots, thudding, his face a map of grief. "She had no right," he muttered, and I knotted my throat tight. The assault, 17 years buried, roared back, the stranger's hands, the hospital's chill, the contraception's failure. We'd chosen love, vowed no tests. But Evelyn's cruelty had shattered that vow. I blocked her number from my phone. Then the kids, my fingers steady, despite the storm within. Mark hesitated, his loyalty to his mother, a fraying thread, but I left his choice to him. The house smelled of Sophie's strawberry shampoo, a fleeting anchor. Lily slept upstairs, unaware her grandmother's meddling had exposed a secret we'd guarded for her. The assault's shadow loomed, its perpetrator caught a year ago, sentenced after my testimony. Lily and Ethan knew I was attacked, but not the truth until now, perhaps. Mark sat beside me, his hand finding mine warm and rough. "We didn't want to know," he said, his voice cracking. "We decided that." Tears spilled as I nodded. "She's ours, Mark. Always." But the paper screamed, doubt, a siren we couldn't silence. Evelyn's motives, her years of suspicion, were a tapestry woven from half-truths. She'd mistaken my survival for betrayal, her judgment a blade honed by pride. The city hummed outside, indifferent, its rhythm a stark contrast to our fractured quiet. I thought of Lily's birth, her tiny hand in mine, the moment we chose love over fear.
That choice was under siege, but I'd fight for it even if it meant facing the past. Humor, my old ally, surfaced faintly. Well, I said, my voice shaky. At least she didn't ruin dessert. Mark's lips twitched a ghost of a smile, and we clung to that flicker. The envelope sat on the coffee table, a silent challenge. Tomorrow, we'd face it together. But tonight, we were adrift, the wound, fresh Evelyn's betrayal, a tide pulling us under. Our vow, our love was all we had, a lighthouse in the fog, and I prayed it would be enough. The wound of Evelyn's betrayal festered like a splinter left too long, its ache radiating through the fragile frame of our family. It was the day after that wretched dinner, the city cloaked in a spring drizzle, its streets gleaming like polished obsidian. I was 45, Mark 48, and our home, once a sanctuary, felt like a stage where grief played its quiet scenes. The air carried the scent of wet earth seeping through the windows, a reminder of life's persistence despite our pain. Mark was a shadow of himself, his eyes hollow as he recounted his visit to Evelyn's house after work. He'd gone alone, driven by a need to understand her cruelty, and the truth he uncovered was a blade twisted deeper. The dramatic event was this confrontation, a reckoning with his mother's betrayal. She's known for a while, he told me, his voice low, the living room dim with evening's creep. She overheard Tom talking to his wife years ago about Lily maybe not being mine. My breath caught the pieces falling into place, Evelyn's suspicions, her DNA test, her venom. An intriguing piece of information lay in how she'd built her case. Mark's drunken confession a year ago during the rapist's hearing had fueled her. He'd been drinking with Tom, the weight of my testimony, heavy, and mumbled in his sleep, I couldn't protect her. And what if she's not mine? Evelyn, eavesdropping, twisted it into proof of my infidelity, not the assault she vaguely knew as an attack. Her pride in bloodlines, her need to control, had driven her to test Lily's DNA, a violation cloaked in righteousness. Everyone in the family still argues whether Mark should have kept silent, but his anger was a tide too strong to hold. I told her the truth. He said, his hands clenched. That Lily's biological father was the man who attacked you. She tried to apologize, but I couldn't hear it. He'd cut her off, his voice breaking, as he told her to stay away, a son, severing a bond forged in years. My heart ached for him, for the boy he'd been under her shadow. The house was quiet, the kids at school unaware of the fault line splitting our world. I sat on the couch, the scent of Sophie's crayons lingering a faint comfort. Mark paced his boots soft on the rug, his grief a mirror to mine. She had no right, he said again, and I nodded, my fingers tracing the envelope's edge, still on the coffee table, its paper, a silent accuser. Why do mothers wound so deeply, like gardeners pruning with a blade too sharp? I thought of Lily, her volleyball practice now, her laughter, a light we'd vowed to protect. The assault, 17 years buried, was a ghost we'd kept from her. But Evelyn's meddling threatened to unearth it. Mark's confession to her that the rapist was Lily's biological father was a truth we'd meant to guard, to let Lily choose when she was ready. Now, it was a wound exposed raw and bleeding. The city hummed outside, its rhythm, indifferent taxis splashing through puddles, vendors calling their voices, a distant chorus. I'd walked to the corner store earlier, the rain cool on my skin, and bought Lily's favorite granola bars, a small act of love. The cashier grinned. Wet day, huh? And I nodded, forcing a smile. At least it's not snow, I said, and he laughed. Humor was my anchor, though it felt frail now, like a kite in a gale. Mark sat beside me, his hand warm on mine. I told her to fuck off. He said, his voice raw, and I squeezed his fingers, a silent vow to weather this together. He was inconsolable, his mother's betrayal, a theft of something sacred. I thought of our pact 17 years ago to love Lily without knowing to let her be ours. Evelyn had shattered that, but we'd rebuild brick by brick. Friends called sensing tension their voices a lifeline. "You okay?" one asked, and I lied. "Just family stuff." The truth was too heavy a stone I couldn't share. At night, I'd watch Lily sleep, her face soft, her height a marvel under the blankets. She was ours, no matter what blood said. Evelyn's cruelty was a storm, but we were the shore enduring. One moment lifted us. Ethan, oblivious, left a note on the fridge. "Save me pizza, losers." I chuckled, showing Mark. "Kids got priorities," I said, and he smiled, a flicker of light. We clung to it, to the kids, to the life we'd built. Evelyn was gone. Her number blocked her presence, a ghost we'd banish. Our love was enough, a river carving through stone, and we'd hold it fast. The wreckage of Evelyn's betrayal lay scattered like leaves after a gale, but in its wake, we found a quiet strength, a resolve to reclaim the family we'd forged. It was late spring, the city blooming with lilacs, their scent drifting through our open windows like a tender apology. I was 45, Mark 48, and our home, though bruised, stood firm, its walls echoing with the voices of Lily, Ethan, and Sophie. The air carried the warmth of fresh bread, a loaf I'd baked to ground us its crust, a small act of defiance. The dramatic event was our decision to sever ties with Evelyn, a line drawn in the sand of our grief. After Mark's confrontation, we told the family, my 7 siblings, Mark's brother Tom, and our closest friends. "She DNA tested Lily without our consent." I said, my voice steady over coffee with my sister, the cafe's espresso scent sharp. "We're done with her." Most agreed their outrage, a chorus, but 2 siblings and Tom wavered, citing Evelyn's ignorance of the assault. "She thought you cheated," Tom said, and I shook my head, the truth too raw to soften. An intriguing piece of information surfaced in the aftermath. Evelyn had used a hairbrush from Lily's room pilfered during a visit to obtain her DNA. A friend in forensics explained how easily it could be done, a betrayal so calculated it chilled me. Everyone in the family still argues whether we should have suspected her sooner, but we'd been blinded by trust, a veil now torn. The days were a delicate dance of healing. Lily sensed the shift, her hazel eyes searching. "What's up with Grandma?" she asked, tossing a volleyball, the living room bright with morning sun. I hesitated, then said, "She crossed a line, sweetie. We're taking a break." She nodded, trusting, and I marveled at her resilience, a mirror of my own. The assault, its shadow long buried, was a truth we'd share when she was ready, not forced by Evelyn's hand. Mark was quieter, his grief a river running deep. "I lost my mother," he said one night, the bedroom soft with moonlight, the city's hum, a distant lullaby. I held him, his flannel warm against my cheek. "You have us," I whispered, and he nodded, a vow renewed. We leaned into our kids, their light a beacon. Sophie's drawings covered the fridge, Ethan's sarcasm a spark, Lily's dreams a flame. Why do families endure, like oaks bending in a storm, rooted deep? The city cradled us, markets bustling, their fruit stalls vibrant, the air rich with roasted nuts. I'd walk with Ethan to his soccer practice, his chatter a balm. "Think I'll score today?" he asked, and I grinned. "Only if you stop tripping over your ego?" I teased, and he laughed, shoving me. Humor was our thread, weaving joy through pain. One day, Sophie dropped her ice cream wailing, and Lily swooped in, sharing hers. "You're my hero," I said, and she winked, her height a marvel. Friends rallied their support, a warm tide. They dropped by, sensing our need, their casseroles filling the kitchen with time and comfort. "You're strong," one said, and I clung to it, though doubt lingered. The assault's ghost stirred, but Lily was its defiance, her existence a star born in darkness. We'd told the kids Evelyn was out, but not why guarding Lily's heart until the time was right. At night, I'd watch Mark with Sophie reading her stories, his voice a low tide. "You're a good dad," I said, and he smiled, faint but real.
Our vow, no tests, no questions had been tested, but it held a lighthouse in the fog. Evelyn's absence was a wound, but also a freedom, her shadow no longer looming. We were enough, our love, a river smoothing jagged stones.
The healing began in small moments. Lily's laughter, Ethan's pranks, Sophie's hugs. We'd chosen love 17 years ago, and it carried us still, a current stronger than betrayal.
The city bloomed its rhythm, a pulse of hope, and we stepped forward together, our family, a tapestry rewoven with care.